The bass from the speakers vibrated through the soles of my heels as I adjusted the hem of my red dress, the fabric clinging to my curves in a way that made me feel bold and just reckless enough for a Friday night. The annual company party was in full swing on the top floor of Castellano Industries, the Manhattan skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows like a constellation brought down to earth. I could smell expensive cologne mixing with champagne, the air thick with corporate celebration and loosened inhibitions. I'd been working in the design department for 3 months, long enough to know which coffee machine actually worked and which elevator button would get you stuck between floors, but not long enough to understand all the office politics or the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. What I did understand was Luca DeLuca, the quiet guy from accounting who somehow always appeared when I was wrestling with the ancient coffee maker in the break room, his gentle smile and patient hands fixing whatever I'd broken this time. "Camilla!" My friend Jessica from marketing grabbed my arm, her enthusiasm fueled by her 3rd glass of wine. "You have to come dance with us," I laughed, extracting myself gently. "In a minute, I need to find—" "Your mysterious coffee buddy?" She waggled her eyebrows suggestively. "Girl, when are you going to make a move? He's been circling you like a moth to a flame for months." Heat crept up my neck. "We're just friends. He's sweet. Sweet." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Honey, the way that man looks at you is anything but sweet. It's more like hungry." I pushed her playfully toward the dance floor, my heart doing an uncomfortable flip. Luca was sweet, gentle, reserved in a way that made me want to coax smiles out of him like pulling sunshine through clouds. He never talked much about himself, deflecting my questions with ones of his own. But he remembered everything I said. How I took my coffee. That I was from a small town in Texas. That my abuela taught me to be loud and unapologetic, because the world tried to make women like us invisible. I spotted him across the room, standing near the bar with a glass of what looked like whiskey, untouched. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly. Nothing flashy, but the way he carried himself suggested a comfort with expensive things. His dark hair was swept back, a few strands falling forward that my fingers itched to push away. Even from here, I could see the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the room with an alertness that seemed at odds with his usual calm demeanor. Something in my chest tightened with anticipation and nerves. Tonight felt different. Maybe it was the dress. Maybe it was the champagne I'd already consumed. Maybe it was just that I was tired of pretending I didn't notice the way my pulse jumped every time he walked into a room. I made my way through the crowd toward him, my confidence growing with each step. This was who I was, my abuela's granddaughter, bold and direct. If I wanted something, I reached for it. "There you are," I said, coming to stand beside him at the bar. "I was beginning to think you'd skipped out on the fun." His eyes found mine, and something flickered in their dark depths. Just observing. Always observing, never participating. I bumped his shoulder with mine, a gesture that had become familiar between us. "You know what your problem is, Luca." One eyebrow lifted slightly, a hint of amusement touching his lips. "I'm certain you're about to tell me." "You're too serious, too reserved, too—" I gestured at him with my champagne glass. "Buttoned up. When was the last time you actually laughed? Like really laughed? Not that quiet chuckle thing you do." The quiet chuckle thing? Now he was definitely amused, the corner of his mouth quirking up. "See? There it is again." I poked his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. "You need to loosen up. Have some fun. This is a party, not a funeral." "Is that your professional assessment?" His voice was low, intimate despite the noise around us. "It is." I finished my champagne, setting the glass on the bar with more force than necessary. The alcohol was making me brave, or stupid, probably both. "In fact, I think you're scared." Scared. He repeated the word as if testing its weight. Scared to let anyone see the real you. Scared to be anything other than the perfect, controlled, serious guy everyone expects. I was on a roll now, my Latina blood rising with the challenge. My abuela always said I talked too much when I drank, that my mouth moved faster than my brain. She was probably right. I bet underneath all that reserve, you're actually fun, maybe even funny, but you're too chicken to show it. The change in him was subtle, but unmistakable. His posture shifted, his jaw tightened, and when his eyes met mine again, they held something dark and dangerous that made my breath catch. The temperature between us seemed to spike, the air growing thick with a tension I didn't fully understand. Camilla? My name on his lips sounded different, weighted with meaning. You should be careful. Careful? I laughed, though it came out slightly breathless. Of what? Of you. His hand moved faster than I expected, wrapping around my wrist with a firmness that wasn't painful, but was absolutely commanding. He pulled me closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive like cedar and smoke, close enough to see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. If you dare tease me again, he said softly, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow cut through all the noise around us. You might discover that I'm not as safe as you think. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't the gentle, quiet Luca from the break room. This was someone else entirely. Someone with edges and shadows that I'd never glimpsed before. His thumb pressed against my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. Is that a threat? I managed to ask, my voice embarrassingly shaky. A warning. He held my gaze for another moment, long enough for me to see something flicker in his eyes that looked almost like regret. Then he released me and stepped back. Excuse me, I need to make a phone call. I watched him walk away, my wrist still tingling from his touch, my mind spinning. What the hell was that? Had I imagined the intensity, the way his carefully controlled mask had slipped just enough to show something darker underneath? Was he just playing along with my teasing, trying to be sexy and mysterious? Wow. Jessica appeared at my elbow, fanning herself dramatically. What did you say to him? Because whatever it was, it worked. That man looked ready to devour you whole. I rubbed my wrist absently, still feeling the ghost of his fingers. I don't know. I was just messing with him, like always, and then he just changed. Changed how? I don't know how to explain it. I frowned, watching Luca disappear through a door marked private. It was like seeing a different person for a second. Someone. Dangerous? Jessica supplied, her voice suddenly more sober. Yeah. The word came out as a whisper. Dangerous. The party continued around us, people dancing and laughing and drinking too much. But something had shifted in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed a line I didn't even know existed. That warning in Luca's voice hadn't been playful or flirtatious. It had been real. I moved toward the windows, needing air and space to think. The city sprawled below us, millions of lights, millions of people living their lives, completely unaware of this strange moment that had just unfolded. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Behind me, I heard voices, low and urgent. Two men I didn't recognize stood near the door Luca had disappeared through, their conversation quiet but intense. I shouldn't eavesdrop. It wasn't my business. But something made me step closer, hidden by a large decorative column, my designer's eye for spatial awareness telling me I was perfectly positioned to hear without being seen. Needs to know there's a problem, one man said, his accent thick with Italian inflection. The informant's been identified. The Russians know he's here tonight. Boss isn't going to like this, the other replied. He specifically said to keep things quiet at this event. It's supposed to be clean. Boss. They said boss with the same reverence people used when talking about CEOs or presidents. But something about the way they said it, combined with the words informant and Russians, made my stomach drop. Where is Mr. DeLuca now? Making calls, trying to contain the situation before. The rest of their conversation was drowned out by a sudden commotion near the entrance. Raised voices, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. People started screaming, and that's when I realized that my sweet, quiet, gentle Luca wasn't who I thought he was at all. The screaming intensified, champagne glasses shattering against marble as people scattered like startled birds. My designer's instinct kicked in, the part of me that was always aware of space and flow and structure, mapping the room's exits even as my heart tried to climb up my throat. The two men I'd been eavesdropping on moved with practiced efficiency toward the commotion, their jackets falling open just enough for me to catch the glint of metal at their waists. Guns. They were carrying guns. My abuela's voice echoed in my head, sharp and clear as if she were standing next to me. When trouble comes, mija, you run. You run, and you don't look back. But my feet felt rooted to the spot. My body pressed against the decorative column as chaos unfolded around me. Through the crowd, I could see men in black suits that weren't part of the original party guests. 4, maybe 5 of them, moving through the room with purpose. They weren't here for champagne and small talk. One of them grabbed a man I vaguely recognized from the IT department, slamming him against the wall with brutal efficiency. Where is he? The attacker demanded, his accent Russian, thick and dangerous. The informant. We know he's here. The IT guy shook his head frantically, genuine terror in his eyes. Wrong person. They had the wrong person. But that meant the right person was somewhere in this room, and these men would tear through every guest until they found him. I needed to move, needed to get to an exit. But as I shifted my weight, preparing to run toward the emergency stairwell I'd mapped out earlier, I caught sight of something that made my blood freeze. Luca was back in the room, but this wasn't the gentle man who fixed my coffee or listened patiently to my design rants. This Luca moved like water, fluid and purposeful, closing the distance between himself and the Russian attackers with a confidence that radiated authority. 2 men flanked him, including the ones I'd overheard, their body language protective and deferential. He wasn't running from danger. He was walking straight into it like he owned it. Petrov. Luca's voice cut through the chaos, and impossibly, the room began to quiet. This is a private event. You weren't invited. The Russian holding the IT guy released him, turning to face Luca with a smile that held no warmth. DeLuca, we meet again. You've been avoiding my calls. I've been busy. Too busy to return what belongs to my organization. Petrov moved closer, his men forming a loose circle. Too busy to acknowledge that your little informant has been feeding you information you had no right to? My mind raced, trying to piece together what I was hearing. Luca was. What? Involved with the Russian Mafia? No, wait. Petrov had said your informant, which meant Luca was on the other side of whatever this was. But that didn't make any sense. Luca worked in accounting. He brought me coffee. He made terrible jokes about spreadsheets and tax codes. What happens in my organization is my concern, Luca replied, his tone conversational but laced with steel. What happens in yours is yours. We had an agreement to keep our territories separate. Agreements change when trust is broken. Petrov pulled out a gun, not pointing it at anyone specifically, just letting it exist in the space between them. Your rat gave you information about our shipments, cost us significant revenue. I'm here to collect what's owed. By terrorizing civilians at a company party? For the first time, I heard anger in Luca's voice, carefully controlled but undeniably there. There are rules, Petrov. Lines we don't cross. This," he gestured at the frightened guests, at the broken glass and overturned tables, "crosses every single one. Then give me what I want, and I'll leave these sheep to their celebration." The tension stretched so tight I thought it might snap and take everyone with it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was witnessing. The man I'd been casually flirting with, the one I'd teased about being too serious, was standing in the center of what looked like a Mafia confrontation, like it was just another Tuesday. Who the hell was Luca DeLuca? My phone buzzed in my clutch, startlingly loud in the relative quiet. Everyone's eyes swiveled toward me, and I realized with growing horror that my hiding spot behind the column wasn't as secure as I'd thought. Petrov's gaze found me, then traveled to Luca, noting the way Luca's entire body had tensed the moment attention turned my direction. "Interesting," Petrov said slowly, a new calculation entering his expression. "And who is this lovely creature? Does DeLuca have a weakness we didn't know about?" "She's no one." Luca's voice was flat, emotionless, but I saw the subtle signal he gave to his men, saw them shift positions slightly. "A designer who works here. Leave her alone." "A designer." Petrov laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You know, I've been in this business long enough to recognize a lie when I hear one. The way you look at her, DeLuca. The way your entire posture changed when she appeared. That's not nothing." I said leave her alone. Now the steel in Luca's voice was explicit, a blade unsheathed. Everything happened at once. One of Petrov's men lunged toward me. Luca moved to intercept. Gunshots exploded through the room, deafening after the tense quiet. People screamed again, genuine panic replacing mere fear. I dropped to the floor on instinct, my hands covering my head as my design training kicked in, calculating angles and trajectories and the shortest path to safety. But the safest path led right through the conflict, right through Luca and Petrov and their terrible dance of violence and power. My abuela would have killed me herself if she knew I was even considering what I was about to do. I ran. Not away from the danger, but toward it. Toward Luca, who had somehow positioned himself between me and the Russian attackers, who was fighting off Petrov's men with a brutal efficiency that spoke of years of training I knew nothing about. His jacket was torn, blood seeping through his white shirt from a cut on his arm, but he barely seemed to notice. "Camila, get back!" he shouted, his eyes wild when they found mine. "Get out of here!" "Not without you." The words came out before I could think about them, before I could remember that I barely knew this man, that everything I thought I knew was apparently a lie. But in that moment, watching him fight to protect not just me but everyone in this room, I couldn't just run and save myself. One of Petrov's men grabbed for me, his fingers catching the fabric of my dress. I did what my abuela taught me, what every woman from my family learned, driving my elbow back into his stomach, and then bringing my heel down on his instep with all the force I could muster. He released me with a curse, and I stumbled forward, right into Luca's arms. "You infuriating woman," he growled. But his arms came around me protectively, shielding me with his body as another shot rang out. "Can you follow instructions just once? Can you try being less mysterious and dangerous?" I shot back, my voice high with adrenaline and fear. "You could have mentioned the whole Mafia boss thing in one of our coffee conversations." His bark of laughter was unexpected, sharp, and genuine. "Mafia boss, is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think." I pressed closer to him as his men engaged with Petrov's forces, the elegant party space transformed into a war zone. "All I know is that you're not who you said you were. People are shooting at us, and I'm very confused about why I'm not running away." "Because you're brave and stubborn and absolutely insane." His hand cupped the back of my head, holding me against his chest as we moved together toward a curtained alcove I hadn't noticed before. "And because despite your better judgment, you trust me, don't you?" I did. God help me, I did. Even though nothing made sense, even though every logical part of my brain was screaming that I should be terrified of him, I trusted the man holding me. The one who had fixed my coffee every morning and listened to my design rants and remembered that I hated roses but loved sunflowers. "How do we get out of here?" I asked, making my decision. "There's a service exit behind this curtain. It leads to a private elevator that goes directly to the parking garage." He pulled the heavy fabric aside, revealing a narrow door. "My car is there. We can—" "Boss!" One of his men appeared, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "Petrov's bringing more reinforcements. We need to evacuate now." Luca's jaw tightened, his arm around me like iron. "Get everyone out through the main exits. Alert the police. Make it look like a standard robbery attempt. I'll handle Petrov." "Sir, you can't—" "That's an order, Marco." His voice held absolute authority, the kind that expected obedience without question. "Clear the room. Protect the civilians. I'll meet you at the safe house." Marco hesitated, his eyes moving between Luca and me, then nodded and disappeared back into the chaos. Luca turned to me, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness given the violence surrounding us. "I need you to listen very carefully. Behind that door is everything you need to get to safety. But once you go through it, once you see what's on the other side, you can't unknow it. You'll be in my world completely. Do you understand?" "Your world," I repeated, my voice steadier than I expected. "Which is complicated, dangerous, full of secrets and violence and choices I've made that I can't undo." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, leaving a smear of blood I suspected was his own. "I never wanted you to see this part of me. Never wanted to expose you to this darkness. But Petrov knows about you now, which means you're not safe anywhere except with me." The weight of what he was saying settled over me like a shroud. My old life, my simple life of bad coffee and design deadlines and meaningless flirtations, was over. The moment I'd walked toward him at this party, the moment I'd teased him and pushed him and demanded to see beneath his careful control, I'd set something in motion I couldn't stop. "I'm scared," I admitted, my hands fisting in his torn shirt. "You should be." He pressed his forehead to mine, his breath warm against my lips. "But I swear to you, Camilla, on everything I am and everything I have, I will keep you safe, even if it means burning down everything else." Another explosion of gunfire, closer this time. We were out of time for explanations and confessions and gentle revelations. He pushed me through the door into darkness, following behind and sealing it shut with a heavy metallic click that sounded like a vault closing or a cage locking. Emergency lighting flickered on, revealing a corridor I'd never seen before, one that clearly wasn't on any official floor plan. How many secrets did this building hold? How many layers of deception existed beneath what I thought I knew? "Come on." Luca took my hand, his fingers warm and solid around mine. "We need to move before—" The door behind us shuddered with impact, someone trying to break through. Petrov or his men, I didn't know which. It didn't matter. We ran together down the corridor, my heels clicking against polished concrete, my red dress catching the dim emergency lights like blood. My abuela used to say that every woman had a moment in her life where everything changed, where the girl she was died, and the woman she would become was born in fire and fear and impossible choices. I'd always thought mine would come gradually, an accumulation of experiences and wisdom over time. I was wrong. It came in a single night, running through secret corridors with a man who was nothing like I'd believed, toward a future I couldn't imagine, leaving behind everything I thought I knew about safety and normalcy and love. The elevator doors opened before us like a mouth, ready to swallow us whole and take us deeper into Luca's world. The world I'd just chosen by not running away when I had the chance. We stepped inside together, and as the doors closed on the chaos behind us, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd just made the best or worst decision of my life. The elevator descended in silence, the only sound our ragged breathing, and the mechanical hum of the cables pulling us down, down, down. Away from the party, away from the chaos, away from the last threads of my normal life. Luca stood beside me, still holding my hand, his thumb tracing absent patterns on my wrist that should have been comforting, but only served to remind me how little I actually knew about the man whose touch I'd craved for months. Blood stained his white shirt, spreading slowly across the fabric like a dark flower blooming. My designer's eye couldn't help but note the expensive weave of the material, the custom tailoring that now hung torn and ruined. "You're hurt," I said, breaking the silence. My voice sounded strange, too calm considering I'd just witnessed a shootout and fled through secret corridors. "It's nothing." He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the descending floor numbers. "Superficial. There's blood. I've had worse." The casual way he said it made something twist in my stomach. How many times had he bled? How many other nights had ended in violence that he shrugged off as nothing? The Luca I thought I knew would have panicked at a paper cut. This Luca barely acknowledged a gunshot wound. "How much of it was a lie?" I asked quietly. "The coffee breaks, the spreadsheet jokes, the shy smiles, all of it?" His jaw tightened, the muscle ticking in a way I'd learned to recognize as frustration. "Not as much as you think." That's not an answer. "Camilla, don't." I pulled my hand from his, needing distance even in the confined space. "Don't Camilla me with that voice like you're trying to calm a spooked horse. You lied to me, for 3 months. You let me think you were just some sweet accountant when you're clearly—" I gestured at him, at the blood and the torn clothes and the way he'd moved through that fight like he was born to violence. "Whatever you actually are. I'm the head of the DeLuca family." His words were flat, matter of fact, like he was informing me of the weather. "The Italian operation that's controlled this territory for 3 generations. My grandfather built the empire. My father expanded it, and I inherited it when he was killed 5 years ago by the same Russian organization Petrov represents." The elevator continued its descent, but I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me completely. Head of the family, the Italian operation. Words that sounded like they belonged in movies, not in my actual life. Not attached to the man who remembered I liked extra foam in my latte. "You're a mob boss." The words felt absurd coming out of my mouth, too dramatic to be real. An actual, literal mob boss. That's one way to put it. Finally, he looked at me, and the expression in his eyes was complicated. Layers of regret and resignation, and something that looked almost like pain. Though I prefer to think of it as being the CEO of a very old, very complex family business. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, slightly hysterical. "Oh, well, when you put it like that, it sounds perfectly normal. Just a regular family business that happens to involve gunfights and Russian Mafia and—" The reality crashed over me again, making my knees weak. Oh my God, I've been flirting with a criminal. Technically, you've been flirting with a legitimate businessman who also happens to run a criminal organization. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "My tax returns are spotless." "This isn't funny." "I know it's not." The almost smile disappeared. "But if I don't find some humor in your reaction, I'm going to have to deal with the reality that I've put you in danger. That because I was selfish enough to want your attention, your laughter, your light in my life for a few stolen moments every day, Petrov now knows you exist, knows you matter to me, and in my world, Camilla, that's a death sentence." The elevator jolted to a stop, the doors opening onto an underground parking garage that looked nothing like the normal employee lot I'd seen. This was private, exclusive, with only a handful of vehicles, each one worth more than my annual salary. My no-cost comparison training kicked in immediately, but the point was made. This was wealth on a different level than the company's salary I knew. We need to keep moving. Luca stepped out first, his body positioning itself automatically between me and any potential threat. Even now, injured and exhausted, he moved with that predatory grace. My car is the black Maserati. Of course it was. Because why wouldn't a mafia boss drive a Maserati? I followed him across the pristine concrete, my heels echoing in the cavernous space. Around us, security cameras tracked our movement, red lights blinking like watching eyes. "Where are we going?" I asked, as he opened the passenger door for me, the gesture so familiar and yet so surreal given everything else. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Petrov can't reach you." He waited until I slid into the leather seat, before closing the door with careful precision, then moved around to the driver's side. The engine purred to life, smooth and powerful. We pulled out of the garage through an exit I'd never seen before, emerging not onto the street I expected, but into an alley that led away from the building entirely. How many escape routes did he have planned? How many contingencies existed for nights when everything went wrong? We drove in silence for several minutes, leaving behind the glittering lights of the business district for darker, quieter streets. My mind kept trying to process everything I'd seen, everything I'd learned, but it felt like trying to hold water in my hands, the truth slipping through my fingers faster than I could grasp it. "The coffee wasn't a lie," Luca said finally, his voice breaking through my spiraling thoughts. "In case you're wondering, the conversations we had, the way I looked forward to seeing you every morning, the fact that you made me laugh when I didn't think I remembered how, none of that was fake. But you were lying about who you are." I stared out the window, watching the city pass by in streaks of light and shadow. "About everything important." "I wasn't lying. I was protecting you." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Do you know what happens to people I care about in my world? They become targets, leverage, ways to hurt me. My father loved my mother so much he put her name on everything he owned, made sure everyone knew she was his greatest weakness. And when his enemies wanted to destroy him, they killed her right in front of him." The raw pain in his voice made me look at him, really look at him, and see past my anger to the man underneath. The man who'd lost his mother to violence, who'd inherited an empire built on blood and fear, who'd spent 5 years protecting everyone around him by keeping them at arm's length. "So you kept me at a distance by pretending to be someone else." I said it as a statement, not a question. "I kept you at a distance by pretending to be someone safe, someone normal, someone you could laugh with and tease and not have to fear." He glanced at me, his expression raw. "For 3 months, when I was with you, I got to be that person. Not the boss, not the heir to a criminal empire. Just Luca, the guy who made bad jokes about spreadsheets and fixed your coffee. That's not fair." My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay strong. "You don't get to make me feel sorry for you when you've been lying to me. I know, you're right. It's not fair." He turned onto a smaller street, then into what looked like a residential neighborhood, though the houses here were massive, set back behind gates and walls. "But nothing about my life is fair, Camilla. Nothing about what I inherited, or what I'm responsible for, or the choices I have to make every single day. And the one purely selfish thing I allowed myself was you. Those moments in the break room when you'd complain about clients, or tell me about your abuela's stories, or make fun of my tie choices. That was the only real thing in my life." We pulled up to a gate that opened automatically, revealing a driveway that led to a house that was more mansion than home. Stone and glass and modern architecture that screamed money and security. Lights flickered on as we approached, illuminating manicured gardens and what looked like armed guards positioned discreetly around the perimeter. "This is your house?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. One of them. The one I actually live in when I'm not maintaining the fiction that I'm a normal businessman with a normal apartment. He parked in front of the main entrance, killing the engine. We'll be safe here tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure out what to do about Petrov and how to keep you protected long term. But right now, I need to stop the bleeding and make sure you're okay. I looked down at myself, surprised to see my red dress was torn, a scratch on my arm I didn't remember getting. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion and shock in its wake. My hands were shaking, I realized. My whole body was shaking. Hey. Luca's voice was soft, gentle, the tone I remembered from our coffee conversations. Look at me. Breathe. You're safe now. Am I? I met his eyes, seeing my fear reflected back at me. Am I really safe, Luca? Or have I just traded one danger for another? He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Finally, he reached over and took my hand again, his touch warm despite the blood and the violence and everything that stood between us. I can't promise you'll always be safe. My world doesn't work that way, but I can promise that I will do everything in my power, use every resource I have, burn down anyone who tries to hurt you. Is that enough? It should have terrified me, the casual way he talked about burning people down. It should have sent me running, demanding he take me home, back to my little apartment and my simple life. But as I sat there in his car, in front of his fortress of a home, with my body still shaking from the danger we'd just escaped, I realized something fundamental had shifted inside me. I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that party. That Camilla, the one who teased gentle accountants and believed the world was mostly safe, was gone. This new version, the one born in gunfire and revelations, knew the truth now. Knew that darkness existed just beneath the surface of normal life. Knew that the man she'd been falling for was more complicated and more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. And the terrifying part was, she still wanted him. Take me inside, I said finally, making my choice. Show me your world, the real one. No more lies, no more pretending. If I'm stuck in this, if Petrov already knows about me, then I deserve to see all of it. Something shifted in Luca's expression, surprise giving way to respect. You're sure? No. I laughed, the sound slightly wild. I'm not sure about anything anymore, but I'm here, and I'm not running, so you might as well tell me everything. He nodded slowly, then got out and came around to open my door, offering his hand like a gentleman despite the blood on his shirt and the danger in his eyes. I took it, letting him help me from the car, my legs unsteady in my torn dress and battered heels. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing a woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair and assessing eyes. Mr. DeLuca, I heard about the incident at the party. Your men are being debriefed in the security office. Thank you, Maria. He kept his arm around me as we entered, and I felt the subtle support, like he knew I was barely holding myself together. This is Camila Herrera. She'll be staying with us. Please prepare the guest suite in the East Wing. Maria's eyes swept over me, taking in my disheveled appearance and the way Luca held me, and something like understanding crossed her face. Of course. Shall I call Dr. Romano for your arm? Yes, and have him check Camilla as well. She's in shock. I'm fine, I protested automatically, but my voice sounded distant even to my own ears. You're not fine. Luca guided me through a marble foyer into what looked like a study, closing the door behind us with a soft click. You've been through trauma. You're allowed to not be fine. The room spun slightly, and I reached for the nearest piece of furniture to steady myself. Luca was there immediately, easing me down into a leather chair before kneeling in front of me, his hands gentle on my knees. Breathe, he instructed, his voice low and soothing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. You're doing great. This is insane, I managed between breaths. This whole night is insane. I know, His thumb traced circles on my knee, the touch grounding me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you got dragged into this. You said the coffee wasn't a lie. I focused on his face, on the familiar features that now seemed to belong to a stranger. What else was real? What else can I believe? He was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his words. Everything between us was real. My interest in you, my enjoyment of our conversations, the way I felt when you smiled at me. All of it was genuine. The only lie was my name. Your name? Luca DeLuca is real, but that's not who people in my world know. To them, I'm Don Lorenzo DeLuca, the head of the family, the boss. He said the title with something that sounded like resignation. Luca was who I wanted to be with you, someone normal. But you're not normal. The reality of it settled over me, heavy and inescapable. You're never going to be normal. No. His honesty was brutal in its simplicity. I'm not, and if you stay in my life, you won't be either. That's why I'm giving you a choice, Camilla. Tomorrow, I can arrange for you to disappear. New identity, new city, new life. You'll be safe from Petrov, and from anyone else who might use you to get to me. Or I stay. I finished for him, already knowing what my answer would be, even as I tried to rationalize running. And let you drag me deeper into your world of violence and secrets. And let me protect you. Really protect you. Not from a distance, not while pretending to be someone I'm not, but as exactly who I am. His eyes were dark and intense, holding mine with that magnetism I'd felt from the beginning. I can keep you safe, Camila. I have resources you can't imagine, people loyal to me who would die before letting harm come to you. But it means being mine, completely. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the way he looked at me, like I was the most valuable thing in his fortress, in his empire, in his complicated and dangerous world. I need time, I said, though part of me wondered if I was just delaying the inevitable. To process all of this, to understand what I'd be agreeing to. You have until morning. He rose, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his injury. Rest, eat, let Dr. Romano check you over, and tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next. But tonight, his expression hardened, becoming the cold, controlled mask I'd seen when facing Petrov. I have work to do, people to answer to, a message to send that attacking my event and threatening what's mine has consequences. I should have asked what those consequences would be, should have demanded to know what violence he was planning. But exhaustion was overtaking shock, and my body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Luca? I called as he moved toward the door. He turned back, one hand on the handle. Thank you for protecting me tonight. Even though this is all your fault, even though I'm furious with you, thank you. Something in his expression softened, the dangerous boss disappearing for just a moment to reveal the man I thought I knew. I'll always protect you, Camilla. No matter what you decide tomorrow, no matter what happens between us, you're mine now, even if you choose to leave. And I protect what's mine. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in his study surrounded by evidence of his real life. Books on business strategy and Italian history. Photographs of stern-faced men who must have been his father and grandfather. Artwork that spoke of old money and older power. I was in over my head, drowning in a world I didn't understand, with a man I'd wanted but never really knew. My abuela would have told me to run. Every logical part of my brain screamed the same message. But when I closed my eyes, I didn't see the violence or the guns or the blood. I saw Luca's smile in the break room, heard his laugh at my terrible jokes, felt his hand in mine as he pulled me to safety. Maybe I was already in too deep to swim back to shore, Maybe the choice had been made the moment I'd walked toward him at that party instead of away. Or maybe I was just too stubborn and too curious, and too attracted to danger to make the smart decision. Tomorrow, I'd face the reality of what staying meant. Tonight, I just wanted to sleep and pretend that when I woke up, I'd understand how my simple life had transformed into something so impossibly complex. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no going back to simple. There was only forward, into darkness and danger, and a love I hadn't asked for but couldn't seem to escape, forward, into Luca's world. Whether that would save me or destroy me remained to be seen. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows I didn't recognize, my body tangled in sheets that felt like silk against my skin. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was, my mind still clinging to the familiar reality of my small apartment. Then everything crashed back. The party, the gunfire, Luca's confession, this fortress he called home. I sat up slowly, taking in the guest suite Maria had prepared for me. The room was 3 times the size of my apartment, decorated in soft creams and grays with touches of gold that spoke of expensive taste. A door to my left led to a bathroom where I'd taken a long shower the night before, scrubbing away blood and champagne and the feeling of hands grabbing at my dress. Another door stood open, revealing a walk-in closet that had been stocked with clothes in my exact size, which raised questions I wasn't ready to examine too closely. On the nightstand, someone had left a tray with coffee, fruit, and what looked like homemade pastries. The coffee was still warm, steam rising in delicate spirals, which meant someone had been in here recently, moving through the room while I slept. The thought should have made me uncomfortable, but exhaustion had knocked me out so completely I hadn't stirred. I reached for the coffee, needing the familiar ritual to ground me. It was perfect, the exact temperature, the amount of foam I preferred, made exactly how Luca had learned I liked it during those months of morning conversations. Even here, even now, he remembered. My phone sat beside the tray, plugged in and fully charged. How had it gotten there? I'd lost track of it sometime during the chaos. I picked it up, expecting to see missed calls and frantic messages from Jessica or other coworkers. But the screen showed nothing. No calls, no texts, not even notifications from my apps. A soft knock made me jump, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim of the delicate china cup. "Miss Herrera?" Maria's voice, professional and warm. "May I come in?" "Yes," I called, grateful I'd found a robe in the closet to wrap around the silk pajamas someone had left for me. She entered with an armful of garment bags, her expression pleasant but assessing. "Good morning. I hope you slept well. Mr. DeLuca asked me to provide you with some options for today." She laid the bags across the bed with practiced efficiency. "He also wanted me to inform you that he'll meet you for breakfast in 30 minutes if you're feeling up to it." "Where is he now?" I asked, setting down the coffee. "In his office, dealing with last night's aftermath." Her tone remained neutral, but I caught the implication. Whatever Luca was doing, it wasn't something I wanted to know the details about yet. "He's been up since 5. Of course he had. While I'd been unconscious, dead to the world from shock and exhaustion, he'd been managing his empire, dealing with the consequences of Petrov's attack, planning whatever revenge or defensive measures came next in this world I'd stumbled into. "Maria?" I hesitated, unsure how to ask what I wanted to know. "How long have you worked for Luca?" "Since he was 16 years old." She began unpacking the garment bags, revealing casual clothes that were somehow still clearly expensive. "I was his mother's housekeeper. After she passed, I stayed to take care of him and his father." "So you've known him a long time." I moved to the window, looking out at gardens that seemed to stretch forever, walls disguised as decorative landscaping, creating barriers between this property and the outside world. "You've seen what this life is really like," I have. She joined me at the window, her reflection in the glass showing a woman who'd seen her share of darkness. And I've seen what it does to the people in it. But I've also seen Mr. DeLuca try harder than any man I've known to be different from his father, to build something that doesn't rely entirely on violence and fear. Is that possible? I asked. In his world? I don't know. Her honesty surprised me. But I've watched him try for 5 years, making changes his father never would have considered, creating legitimate businesses to replace the criminal ones. It's slow work and dangerous work, because change threatens those who profit from the old ways. But he's trying. I absorbed this information, adding it to everything else I was trying to process. Luca wasn't just a mafia boss content to rule through violence. He was trying to transform his inheritance into something else. It didn't excuse the lies, didn't erase the danger, but it complicated my understanding of him even further. Miss Herrera, Maria said gently, I've worked for this family long enough to recognize when something significant happens. The way Mr. DeLuca looks at you, the lengths he went to protect you last night, the fact that he brought you here to his private sanctuary. These are not small things. He cares for you, perhaps more than is wise for a man in his position. That's what scares me. I turned to face her. Being someone he cares about makes me a target. That's what he said. It does. She didn't soften the truth. But it also makes you the most protected person in this city. Mr. DeLuca has resources and loyalty that most people can't comprehend. If he's claimed you as his, then anyone who touches you signs their own death warrant. The casual way she mentioned death warrants made my stomach twist. This was the reality I was considering stepping into, where violence was a tool, where human lives were chess pieces to be moved and sacrificed. Could I really live in this world? Could I accept being with someone who made these kinds of choices? I'll leave you to get ready, Maria said, moving toward the door. Breakfast is in the sunroom at the back of the house. I'll have someone show you the way. After she left, I went through the motions of getting ready on autopilot. The clothes fit perfectly, designer labels and styles I would have chosen for myself if I could afford them. Jeans that hugged my curves, a soft cashmere sweater in cream, leather boots that were broken in just enough to be comfortable. Even the underwear was my size and style, which meant Luca had been paying attention to more than just how I took my coffee. That should have creeped me out. Instead, it sent a flutter through my chest that I tried to ignore. The house was massive, and I got lost twice before finding the sunroom, a glass-enclosed space filled with plants and morning light. Luca stood at the far end, talking on his phone in rapid Italian, his back to me. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. The blood and torn shirt from last night were gone, but I could see the edge of a bandage peeking out from under his sleeve. He turned as I entered, his eyes finding me immediately. I need to go, he said into the phone, still in Italian, then added something else I couldn't understand before hanging up. Good morning. His English was slightly accented, I realized, hearing it now that I wasn't distracted by everything else. How had I never noticed that before? You look better. Did you sleep? Like the dead. The phrase came out before I could stop it, and I winced at the inappropriate comparison given the context. Sorry, bad choice of words. A smile ghosted across his face. Accurate, though. Maria said you didn't wake even when Dr. Romano checked on you. He came back? Twice. Once last night after you fell asleep, and again this morning. You have a bruise on your ribs from where that man grabbed you, but otherwise you're fine. Physically. He gestured to the table, which was laden with food. Are you hungry? My chef makes excellent omelets. I sat, grateful for the normalcy of the gesture even as the absurdity struck me. We were having a civilized breakfast after a night that included a mafia war, and multiple revelations that had upended my entire understanding of reality. My abuela would have said this is what happens when you play with fire. You get burned, but somehow still have to eat breakfast the next morning. I have questions, I said as Luca poured coffee for both of us, with the easy competence of someone who'd done this before. About everything. I expected you would. He sat across from me, his hands wrapped around his cup. Ask. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Why me? The question burst out before I could organize my thoughts. Of all the women you could have chosen, why did you pursue someone you worked with? Someone in your building? Wasn't that dangerous for both of us? He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. It was extremely dangerous. Reckless, actually. My security team advised against it repeatedly. But you... He paused, searching for words. You made me laugh on the worst day of my year. Do you remember the first time we spoke? I did. I'd been fighting with the coffee machine, cursing it in Spanish and English, my day already going badly after a client had rejected my entire design proposal. Luca had appeared beside me, hadn't said a word, just reached over and pressed a button I'd missed. The machine had immediately started working, and I'd been so frustrated I'd snapped at him about how it wasn't fair that he made it look easy. You called me a coffee wizard, he said, the memory softening his expression. And then you apologized for being rude and explained that your design client had been a disaster. You told me about the project, showed me the rejected concepts on your phone, and asked my opinion even though I was just some guy from accounting. I remember. My voice was quieter than I intended. You said the client was an idiot and my designs were brilliant. They were brilliant. You have real talent, Camilla. A unique perspective that combines practicality with beauty. He leaned forward slightly. But more than that, you were real. Genuinely yourself in a building full of people who filtered every word through politics and ambition. You swore at a coffee machine. You showed your work to a stranger. You didn't care that I might think you were unprofessional or too emotional. You were just you. So you wanted me because I was authentic? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. That seems like a low bar. In my world, authenticity is rarer than diamonds. His eyes held mine. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an agenda. Every interaction is a negotiation or a power play. But you just wanted me to fix your coffee and listen to you vent about design clients. You saw me as Luca, not Don Lorenzo. And I became addicted to that feeling, to being treated like a normal person instead of a weapon or a resource. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. Hadn't I been drawn to his quiet steadiness? The way he actually listened instead of just waiting for his turn to talk? The sense that beneath his reserved exterior was someone worth knowing. What happens now? I asked, moving to the more immediate concern. Petrov knows about me. You said that makes me a target. Luca's expression hardened. Petrov is being dealt with. What does that mean? It means he violated the agreements between our organizations, attacked civilians at a public event, threatened someone under my protection. His voice was cold, controlled. There are consequences for that. You're going to kill him. It wasn't a question. I'm going to remove the threat he represents. He didn't flinch from my gaze. That's what I do, Camilla. I protect my people, my territory, my interests. Petrov made himself my enemy. Now I eliminate him before he can hurt anyone else. The clinical way he discussed murder should have sent me running. But I thought about those men in the party, about how they'd grabbed innocent people, how they'd had no hesitation about shooting into a crowd, about how one of them had grabbed me, would have taken me if Luca's men hadn't intervened. And me? I asked. What am I in this equation? One of your interests to protect? He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You're mine. I know that sounds possessive and probably frightening given what you learned last night. But in my world, Claiming someone as mine is the highest form of protection I can offer. It means every resource I have, every person loyal to me, every bit of power I've accumulated, all of it stands between you and harm. It also means I belong to you. I set down my coffee cup. Like property. No. His vehemence surprised me. Like family. Like someone so valuable that losing them would destroy me. He reached across the table, his hand hovering over mine, asking permission. My mother was my father's greatest love and his fatal weakness. He loved her so much he couldn't hide it, couldn't protect her properly. And when his enemies killed her, it broke something in him. He became worse, more violent, more ruthless. I watched what loving someone did to him, and I swore I'd never let myself be that vulnerable. I turned my hand over, letting him take it. His fingers were warm, calloused in ways I'd never noticed during our casual touches in the break room. What changed? You did. Simple. Direct. 3 months of watching you, talking to you, being near you. I tried to stay distant, tried to maintain the fiction that we were just colleagues with a friendly rapport. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a pleasant distraction and became necessary. And last night, when Petrov looked at you with calculation in his eyes, when I realized I'd put you in danger just by wanting you close, I had to make a choice. What choice? Whether to push you away for your safety, or pull you in where I could protect you properly. His thumb traced patterns on my wrist. I chose protection. I chose being selfish. I chose claiming you publicly, so everyone knows that touching you means war with me. The weight of what he was saying settled over me. By bringing me here, by having his men extract me from the party, by announcing to his world that I mattered, he'd made a declaration. I was no longer an anonymous designer with a crush on a coworker. I was Don Lorenzo DeLuca's woman, which came with protection, but also a target painted on my back. I need to know something, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. Last night, when you warned me at the party, when you said, if you dare tease me again, were you actually warning me, or was that just you trying to be mysterious? A rueful smile crossed his face. Both. You were pushing me, getting under my skin in ways I didn't know how to handle. Part of me wanted to kiss you right there in front of everyone. Another part knew that would be dangerous for both of us, so I tried to scare you off a little, make you back down. Obviously, it didn't work. I don't scare easily. My abuela's stubbornness running through my veins. I know. It's one of the things He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. One of the things that makes you dangerous to me. How am I dangerous to you? You're the one with guns and loyal soldiers and an underground empire. Exactly. He stood, pulling me up with him, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent from the coffee machine encounters, but somehow more potent now. I have everything except someone who sees me, really sees me. Not the position or the power or the name, just me. And you did that from the first day, looked at me like I was just a person you wanted to know better. That's more dangerous than any weapon Petrov could point at me. We stood there in the morning light, surrounded by plants and glass, and the illusion of normalcy, while outside his walls the consequences of last night were playing out in ways I could only imagine. This man who had lied to me, who'd hidden his true nature, who was planning violence in response to violence, was also the man who'd remembered how I took my coffee and listened to my design rants and made me feel seen in a city that often made me feel invisible. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted, my honesty matching his. Be part of your world. Accept that you solve problems with violence. Live knowing that people might come after me just to hurt you. I know. He didn't try to convince me otherwise. Didn't make promises he couldn't keep. It's a lot to ask. More than anyone should have to accept. But I also don't know if I can walk away. The confession came out as a whisper. From you. From this thing between us that I don't fully understand, but can't seem to escape. Then don't walk away. Not yet. His hand came up to cup my face, his touch gentle despite the violence those hands were capable of. Stay. Learn about my world. Let me show you that it's not all darkness and danger. That there's also loyalty and honor and people trying to build something better than what came before. And if, after seeing all of it, you decide you can't live with it, I'll help you disappear. New identity, new life, complete protection. I swear it. Why would you do that? Let me go after claiming me? Because keeping you trapped in a life you don't want would destroy the very thing I value about you. His eyes were dark and serious. Your spirit, your authenticity, your fire. I want you to choose this. Choose me, because you want to. Not because you're scared or trapped, or have no other options. Before I could respond, the door to the sunroom opened, and a man in a dark suit entered, his expression urgent. Boss, we have a situation. Petrov has responded to our message. Luka's entire demeanor shifted, the gentle man disappearing behind the cold mask of the dawn. What kind of response? He's requested a meeting. Neutral territory. Says he wants to negotiate. It's a trap. Luka said it with certainty. Probably. But if you refuse, it gives him the political opening to claim you're the one escalating the conflict. I watched this exchange, seeing the calculation on Luka's face, the weight of decisions I couldn't fully comprehend. This was his other life, the one I'd only glimpsed last night. This was who he really was when he wasn't fixing my coffee or making bad jokes about spreadsheets. Set it up. Luka's voice was hard, final. But maximum security. And tell Marco I want our best shooters positioned at every angle. The man nodded and left, and Luka turned back to me with an apologetic expression. I need to handle this. I understand. I did, surprisingly. This was his job, his responsibility. The people who depended on him for protection and leadership needed him to respond to Petrov's moves. What should I do? Stay here. Maria will keep you company. There's a library, a home theater, a pool, whatever you need to occupy yourself. He hesitated. And there's a design studio. Second floor, east wing. I had it set up months ago, just in case you ever needed space to work. My heart did that uncomfortable flip again. You built me a design studio? I wanted you to have everything you needed if you ever came here. He looked almost embarrassed, this powerful, dangerous man admitting to creating space for me in his fortress. Is that too much? Too possessive? It's completely insane. I laughed, slightly hysterical. You built me a studio before I even knew who you really were. I was planning for the future. He moved toward the door, then looked back. A future I hoped would include you. Is that insane? Yes. I met his eyes. But maybe I like a little insanity. His smile was quick and genuine, the Luka from the coffee machine making a brief appearance before the dawn took over again. I'll be back by evening. Don't leave the property. And Camilla? Think about what I offered, about staying, about choosing this life. Because after today, after Petrov, things are going to escalate. And I need to know if you're in this with me, or if I need to get you out before it gets worse. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the sunroom with cold coffee and impossible decisions. Through the windows, I could see his men mobilizing, cars pulling out of the garage, the machinery of his empire in motion. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. OMG, are you okay? Everyone's talking about the shooting at the party. They're saying it was a robbery attempt. Call me. I stared at the message, at the simple concern from my normal life, and realized how far away that world already felt. The shooting, the violence, Luka's confession, all of it had shifted my reality so completely that Jessica's message seemed to come from another universe entirely. I needed to see this design studio. Needed to understand what Luca had built for me, what future he'd been imagining when he should have been keeping his distance. Because the truth was, I'd already made my decision. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. I was going to stay. Not because I was trapped or scared, but because when I imagined walking away from Luca, from the man who'd built me a design studio and remembered my coffee order and looked at me like I was precious, my heart rebelled against the idea. My abuela would have called me crazy. She would have been right. But sometimes crazy was the only honest response to finding out that the man you'd been falling for was actually a mafia boss who wanted to give you the world, even if that world came wrapped in violence and danger and impossible choices. I was going to choose him. Choose this. Choose the insanity of loving someone I barely knew but couldn't imagine losing. God help me. I was going to choose Luca's world. And pray that decision didn't destroy us both. The design studio took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light, reflecting off pristine white walls and pale wood floors. 2 industrial-grade drafting tables dominated the center, surrounded by ergonomic chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. Digital tablets, specialized software already loaded and licensed, shelves of fabric samples and material swatches organized by color and texture. Everything a designer could want was here, waiting. But it was the smaller details that made my throat tight. A coffee station in the corner with my preferred brand of beans and the exact milk I liked. A small refrigerator stocked with the sparkling water I always grabbed from the break room at work. A corkboard already mounted on one wall, waiting for inspiration boards and sketches. Photographs of my past projects, somehow acquired and professionally printed, arranged on another wall like a gallery of my work. He'd been planning this for months. While I'd been crushing on my quiet coworker, he'd been building me a sanctuary within his fortress. The level of attention, of care, was overwhelming. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Maria's voice came from the doorway. He spent weeks getting the light exactly right, had the windows specially installed for optimal north-facing illumination. I turned to find her watching me with knowing eyes. "He told you what this was for?" "Not in so many words, but I've worked for this family long enough to recognize when a man is nesting." She smiled slightly. "Preparing a space for someone important. His mother did the same thing when she was pregnant with him, redoing rooms over and over until they were perfect." The comparison made something flutter in my chest. "I'm not pregnant." "Not what I meant, dear." Maria moved into the room, running her fingers over the fabric samples. "I meant that he was preparing for permanence, for building a life that included you in ways that went beyond casual encounters over coffee machines. This is the room of a man who sees a future." I sank into one of the chairs, the expensive leather enveloping me in comfort. "How do you do it? Live in this world? Work for someone who makes the choices Luca makes?" She was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "I watched his mother try to change his father, try to bring light into darkness. She believed love could transform the violence of their world into something gentler, something better. And in some ways, she succeeded. Mr. DeLuca Sr. was softer with her, more human. But the world they lived in was stronger than her influence. It broke her in the end, killed her for trying to change what shouldn't be changed. That's not encouraging. I fingered one of the fabric samples, silk, that felt like water against my skin. "I'm not trying to encourage you. I'm trying to be honest." Maria sat in the other chair, her posture relaxed. "Luca is not his father. He's trying to build something different, to transition the family business into legitimate enterprises. But that's slow work, and dangerous work, because old loyalties and old ways of doing business don't change easily. You need to understand what you'd be walking into. I'm beginning to." I thought about the conversation at breakfast, about Luca's admission that I was dangerous to him, that he was making me a target by claiming me. He offered to help me disappear if I decide I can't handle this. New identity, new life, complete escape. He would. Maria nodded. Because despite everything, despite the violence and the power and the choices he has to make, Luca has his mother's heart. He wants to protect the people he cares about, even if that means protecting them from himself. Do you think I should run? If you were advising me as a friend, not as his housekeeper, what would you tell me? She studied me for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. I'd tell you that every choice has a cost. Running means safety, but also loneliness, always wondering what might have been. Staying means danger, but also belonging to something larger than yourself. Being part of a family, even one built on complicated foundations. She paused. And I'd tell you that I've seen the way he looks at you. The way he's been different these past months, lighter somehow. That's worth something, even in a dark world. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica, more urgent this time. A news alert about a shooting in the warehouse district, rumors of gang violence, speculation about Mafia involvement. Luca's meeting with Petrov was making headlines, even if the media didn't know the full story. Is he in danger? I asked, showing Maria the alert. This meeting with Petrov? Always. Her answer was simple and devastating. Every time he steps out of this house, every time he meets with other families or handles problems, he's in danger. That's the reality of what he is, what he does. You'll have to live with that fear if you stay. The constant awareness that any moment could be the one where he doesn't come home. The image of Luca not coming home, of learning he'd been killed at some meeting or ambush, made my stomach turn over. I'd known him such a short time, but the thought of losing him felt impossible to bear. When had that happened? When had this man become so important that imagining his death felt like imagining my own? I need to work, I said abruptly, standing and moving to one of the drafting tables. Design something. Use my hands. It helps me think. Maria nodded, understanding. I'll bring you lunch in a few hours. And Camilla? Whatever you decide, he'll respect it. That's something you can count on with him. After she left, I lost myself in design work, sketching concepts for a residential project I'd been developing before the party had derailed everything. My hands moved across the tablet, creating lines and spaces and beauty from nothing. This was my refuge, my way of making sense of chaos by creating order on a page. Hours passed, marked only by the changing angle of sunlight through those perfect windows. Maria brought lunch as promised, along with more coffee and a quiet presence that I found comforting. I worked through the afternoon, developing concepts and solving spatial problems, letting the familiar process calm my racing thoughts. I was so focused that I didn't hear the door open again, didn't realize I wasn't alone, until strong arms wrapped around me from behind, pulling me against a solid chest that smelled of gunpowder and smoke under expensive cologne. Luca. Relief flooded through me, mixed with questions and concern. You're back. Are you hurt? What happened? I'm fine. His voice was tired, strained in a way I'd never heard before. It went as expected. Petrov is neutralized. The threat is contained. He turned me in his arms, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of whatever he'd done today settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. Neutralized. The euphemism didn't hide the reality. You killed him. I eliminated a threat to my family, to my people, to you. No apology, no justification, just statement of fact. That's what I do, Camilla. That's what I am. If you're going to be part of my life, you need to accept that sometimes I make decisions that result in death. I should have been horrified, should have pulled away and demanded he take me home immediately. But looking at his face, seeing the exhaustion and the acceptance of what his role required, I couldn't find the moral outrage I expected to feel. Petrov had threatened me. had attacked civilians at a party, had been willing to kill to get what he wanted. Luca had removed that threat, protected his people, done what his position demanded. "Are you okay?" I asked instead, my hands coming up to frame his face. "You look exhausted." Something in his expression cracked, the cold mask of the dawn giving way to something more vulnerable. "I'm tired, so tired of having to make these choices, of living up to what's expected of me, of being Don Lorenzo instead of just Luca." He leaned into my touch. "But then I came home and saw you here, in the studio I built for you, creating beauty like you were born to do, and I remembered why I make those choices, why I carry this weight. Luca, I love you." The words came out rough, like they'd been dragged from somewhere deep and painful. "I know it's too soon. I know I have no right after lying to you and dragging you into my world. But I've been half in love with you since you called me a coffee wizard, and fully in love with you since you pulled me behind that curtain instead of running away. So I need you to know, before you make your decision, that whatever you choose, I love you. And I'll respect your choice even if it destroys me." My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. 3 months of coffee conversations and growing feelings and attraction I'd tried to keep professional. And now this man was standing in front of me covered in the aftermath of violence and declaring love with a raw honesty that stripped away every defense I had left. "I'm not running." The words came out steady, certain. "I'm staying. I'm choosing this insanity. Choosing you, even though my abuela would tell me I've lost my mind." His eyes searched mine, looking for doubt or hesitation. "You're sure? Once you're part of this, really part of it, there's no going back to your old life. You'll be mine, and everyone will know it. That comes with protection, but also with danger, with expectations and obligations and—" I kissed him, cut off his words with my lips, because I didn't need any more warnings or explanations. I'd made my choice, and I was done with hesitation. His surprise lasted only a moment before he responded, one hand tangling in my hair while the other pulled me closer, like he was trying to merge our bodies into one. The kiss was everything our months of careful distance had denied us. Hungry, desperate, claiming. He tasted like coffee and danger and promise, and I wanted more, wanted everything he'd been holding back, everything we'd denied ourselves while pretending he was just a coworker and I was just a designer with a crush. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "You're mine now. Completely. Do you understand what that means?" "I'm beginning to." I traced the line of his jaw, feeling the roughness of late-day stubble. "It means I'm part of your world, part of your family. It means I accept who you are and what you do, even when it scares me. It means I trust you to keep me safe. Always." The word was a vow. "I will always keep you safe, even if it costs me everything." "Then show me." I pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. "Show me the rest of your world, the parts you've been protecting me from. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to understand all of it, not just the surface." He studied me for a long moment, clearly weighing how much truth to share. Finally, he nodded. "Come with me." He led me through the house to a part I hadn't seen before, past checkpoints where guards nodded respectfully, through doors that required fingerprint and retinal scans. We descended stairs into what could only be described as a command center, walls covered with monitors showing security feeds from across what I assumed was his territory. Men and women worked at computers, tracking information and coordinating activities I could only guess at. "This is the nerve center of our operation," Luca explained, his hand at the small of my back. "We monitor our businesses, track threats, coordinate security for everyone under our protection. It's not all violence and crime, Camilla. Most of what we do is legitimate business and community protection. But not all of it. I watched as one screen showed what looked like a warehouse operation, goods being loaded and unloaded. No, not all of it. He was honest, which I appreciated. Some of our operations exist in gray areas. Gambling, import-export that doesn't always go through official channels, lending that doesn't follow traditional banking regulations. And yes, sometimes violence is necessary to maintain order and protect our interests. But I'm working to reduce that, to transition everything to legitimate enterprises. It's just slow. He showed me more. The financial operation that managed investments in businesses, the legal team that kept them protected from prosecution, the social programs they funded in neighborhoods under their influence. It was complex, multi-layered, not the simple good versus evil narrative I'd imagined. My father ruled through fear, Luca said as we returned to the main house. He believed power came from being the most violent, the most ruthless. But I've seen what that creates. Instability, constant warfare, inability to build anything lasting. I'm trying something different, building alliances, creating legitimate revenue streams, using violence only as a last resort rather than a first response. Is it working? I asked. Sometimes. Not always. There are elements in my own family who think I'm weak, who want to return to the old ways. Others see what I'm trying to build and support it. It's a constant negotiation. We entered his private office, and he poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me. And now I've complicated everything by claiming you publicly, by making it clear that you're my greatest vulnerability. I don't want to be your weakness. I took the wine but didn't drink yet. I want to be your strength. You're both. He traced my cheekbone with his thumb, the gesture achingly tender. My greatest vulnerability and my strongest motivation to build something better, to prove that this world doesn't have to be all darkness. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call from Jessica. I glanced at Luca, who nodded permission. This was part of choosing his world, figuring out how to maintain connections to my old life while living in his. Jess, I answered, trying to sound normal. Sorry I haven't called back. It's been crazy. I know. The whole office is freaking out about the shooting. Some people are saying it was targeted, that someone important was there. Are you okay? Where are you? I looked at Luca, who was watching me with patient understanding, letting me decide how much to share. I'm safe. I'm with someone who's protecting me. I can't really explain more right now, but I'm okay. I promise. With someone? Jessica's voice took on a knowing tone. Wait, are you with the coffee guy? The mysterious one you've been crushing on? Did something finally happen between you two? Despite everything, I laughed. You could say that. It's complicated, Jess. Really complicated. But I'm okay, and I'll explain everything when I can. Just trust me for now? Always. But you owe me details. Like, all the details. She paused. Everyone's saying the company's shutting down for a few days while they deal with the party aftermath. So at least you don't have to worry about work immediately. After we hung up, I found Luca smiling slightly. Your friend sounds persistent. She's loyal. She'll keep my confidence even when she doesn't understand everything. I moved to stand in front of him, setting down my wine. Like I'm going to do. Trust you even when I don't understand all your choices. I don't deserve that trust. His hands found my waist, pulling me between his legs where he sat on the edge of his desk. But I'm grateful for it. Then don't make me regret giving it. I cupped his face in my hands. Show me that this world you're building can include something good, something beyond violence and power plays and constant danger. I will. He pulled me down for another kiss, softer this time but no less intense. Starting now. Starting with building a life that includes both your light and my darkness. If you'll have me. All of me. I'll have you. My answer was simple, certain. The coffee wizard and the Don. The gentleman and the dangerous one. All of it. Around us, his empire continued its work. Monitors glowed with security feeds, phones rang with business calls, the machinery of his world in constant motion. But in this moment, in his office with his arms around me and my choice made, everything else faded to background noise. I'd chosen the insanity, chosen to love a man who was both gentle protector and ruthless leader, chosen to step into a world where danger and beauty coexisted, where violence protected pockets of peace, where my Latina fire would burn alongside his Italian intensity. My abuela would have called me crazy, but she would also have understood that sometimes love required courage, required stepping into the unknown because the alternative, a life without this connection, without this man, was unbearable. I'd made my choice. Now I just had to prove I was strong enough to live with it. 3 weeks had passed since I'd moved my entire life into Luca's fortress. 3 weeks of learning to navigate his world, of understanding the delicate balance between legitimate business and criminal empire, of becoming the woman at Don Lorenzo De Luca's side instead of just Camilla from the design department. The transition had been surreal. My apartment in Queens had been quietly emptied, my belongings integrated into the guest suite that had become my official room, though I rarely slept there anymore, usually ending up in Luca's bed instead, wrapped in his arms while he whispered Italian endearments, and I pretended not to notice the gun he kept in the nightstand. I'd officially resigned from my job at Castellano Industries, though Maria had let slip that Luca still owned my old company, had in fact founded it years ago as part of his legitimate business portfolio. So technically, I'd never stopped working for him, just changed my role from anonymous designer to something much more visible and complicated. The design studio had become my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in creative work while Luca handled the darker aspects of his empire. He'd started bringing me projects, legitimate ones from his property development businesses, asking my opinion on renovations and new constructions. It felt good to be useful, to contribute something beyond just being his woman, his vulnerability, his light in the darkness. But tonight was different. Tonight, Luca was hosting a gathering of the major families, the first since he'd eliminated Petrov and declared me his publicly. It was a test of sorts, a way to demonstrate that his decision to claim me hadn't weakened him, and that his authority remained unchallenged despite introducing a complication into his life. Maria had spent hours helping me prepare, selecting a dress that walked the line between elegant and powerful. Emerald green silk that Luca had specifically chosen, cut to show just enough skin to be stunning without being inappropriate for a Mafia gathering. My hair was swept up into an elaborate style that made my neck look elegant, and the jewelry Luca had given me, diamond earrings and a necklace that probably cost more than my education, caught the light with every movement. "You look beautiful," Maria said, stepping back to admire her work. "But more importantly, you look like you belong here. Like you're not someone to be dismissed or underestimated." "I don't feel like I belong here." I stared at my reflection, barely recognizing the sophisticated woman looking back at me. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life." "We all feel that way in the beginning." She squeezed my shoulder gently. "But you've adapted faster than most. You have strength your predecessors lacked. That Latina fire combined with genuine intelligence and empathy. That's rare in this world." A knock at the door interrupted us, and one of Luca's men, I'd learned his name was Paolo, entered with a polite nod. "Miss Herrera, the boss is ready for you. The first guests are arriving." I took a deep breath, running my hands over the silk dress one more time. "Okay, let's do this." Luca waited for me at the top of the grand staircase, looking devastating in a custom tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and commanding presence. His eyes found me as I approached, and the heat in his gaze sent a shiver down my spine despite my nerves. "Bellissima," he murmured, taking my hand and bringing it to his lips. "You take my breath away." "I'm terrified," I admitted quietly. "What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing or embarrass you?" "Impossible." He tucked my hand into the crook of his arm, the gesture both protective and possessive. "You are exactly who you need to be. Smart, strong, and completely yourself. That's what I love about you, Camilla. You don't pretend to be something you're not. Even when maybe I should pretend." I gestured at the grand staircase leading down to where his guests were beginning to gather. "I'm a designer from Queens with a Texas accent and a tendency to speak before I think. These are mafia bosses and their wives. Sophisticated, dangerous people who probably eat girls like me for breakfast." "Girls like you?" He stopped, turning me to face him fully. "You mean strong women who survive on their own, who build careers through talent rather than connections, who have the courage to stand next to a man like me despite knowing the risks. Yes, they definitely eat women like that for breakfast. Because women like you are rare and powerful and everything they pretend to be but aren't." His confidence in me was almost enough to override my terror. Almost. What if they ask about my background, my family? "Tell them the truth. Your abuela raised you in Texas to be proud of your heritage. You worked your way through design school. You're brilliant at what you do." He traced my jawline with his thumb. "And if anyone disrespects you, they disrespect me. And no one is foolish enough to disrespect Don Lorenzo de Luca in his own home." The gathering below had grown, the sound of conversation and laughter floating up the staircase. I could see men in expensive suits and women in designer gowns, could feel the weight of their attention as they noticed Luca and me at the top of the stairs. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm again. "No, but I'm doing this anyway." I straightened my spine, channeling every ounce of my abuela's courage and stubbornness. "Because I'm yours, and that means I stand beside you, even when I'm terrified. Especially when you're terrified." His smile was full of pride and affection. That's when true courage shows. We descended together, and I felt every eye in the room track our movement. The conversations quieted, people turning to watch the infamous Don Lorenzo present his woman to the assembled families. I kept my chin up, my hand steady on Luca's arm, refusing to show the fear churning in my stomach. At the bottom of the stairs, an older man approached, his silver hair and commanding presence marking him as someone important. "Lorenzo," he greeted Luca with the warmth of long familiarity. "You've been hiding this beauty from us. That's not very neighborly." "Uncle Giuseppe." Luca's voice held genuine affection as he embraced the older man. I wanted to be certain before making introductions. "Camilla, this is Giuseppe Rossini, my father's oldest friend, and the man who taught me everything about this life." "It's an honor to meet you," I said, offering my hand. Giuseppe took it, but instead of shaking it, he kissed it in the old world style. "The honor is mine, Cara. Lorenzo has spoken of you with such devotion. I began to think you were too perfect to be real. But here you stand, even more beautiful than his words suggested." His eyes, sharp despite his age, assessed me carefully. "And brave, I think, to take on this world, this life. That requires more courage than most possess." "Or more foolishness," I replied, then immediately worried I'd said the wrong thing. But Giuseppe laughed, a booming sound that drew attention from nearby guests. "She has humor and honesty. This is good, Lorenzo. This is very good." He turned back to me. "My late wife was much like you. Spoke her mind, didn't pretend to be what she wasn't. I hope you'll let me tell you stories of her sometime. I think you would have liked each other." "I'd like that very much," I said sincerely, some of my tension easing at his warmth. More introductions followed, a blur of names and faces and careful assessments. Some of the families were genuinely welcoming, clearly pleased that Luca had found someone. Others were more reserved, their politeness hiding skepticism about whether I was strong enough for this life, smart enough to be an asset rather than a liability. One woman in particular, Adriana Mancini, wife of another Don, studied me with cool appraisal as we were introduced. "So you're the designer Lorenzo has been hiding away," she said, her English perfect but heavily accented. "How charming. Tell me, dear, what do you bring to this union besides youth and beauty? Because in our world, those fade quickly, and then what value remains?" The challenge was clear, the test of whether I would crumble under pressure or stand my ground. I felt Luca tense beside me, ready to defend me, but I squeezed his arm slightly, signaling I could handle this. "I bring myself," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "My skills, my perspective, my absolute loyalty to the man I've chosen. And yes, I'm young, and haven't been raised in this world. But I learn quickly, and I'm not afraid of the complexity or the danger. That has its own value, doesn't it? Fresh eyes seeing solutions others might miss because they're too close to tradition." Adriana's expression remained neutral for a long moment. Then she smiled, genuine warmth replacing the cool assessment. "You'll do," she said simply. "My husband will be pleased. He was worried Lorenzo had chosen someone too soft, someone who would break under the pressure. But I see steel beneath your pretty surface. Good. You'll need it." As she moved away, Luca leaned down to murmur in my ear, "That was perfect. Adriana is notoriously difficult to impress. You just won over one of the most influential women in our world." I almost threw up, I admitted quietly. But my abuela always said fake it till you make it, so that's what I did. His laugh was low and intimate, sending heat through me despite the public setting. "Your abuela sounds like a wise woman." The evening progressed with surprising smoothness. I navigated conversations about art and design, found common ground with wives who were sophisticated but not as intimidating as I'd feared, and generally managed not to embarrass myself or Luca. The food was incredible, wine flowing freely as the gathering relaxed into genuine celebration rather than political maneuvering. I was in conversation with Giuseppe and his daughter, discussing a renovation project their family was considering, when I noticed the change in atmosphere. Conversations quieted, tension rippling through the room like a stone dropped in still water. I looked to Luca, who had gone very still, his expression hardening into the cold mask of the dawn. A man had entered uninvited, flanked by 2 guards. He was older, perhaps 60, with gray hair and the kind of presence that suggested he was used to commanding attention. But it was the calculating cruelty in his eyes that made my stomach drop. "Carmine," Luca's voice was ice. "You weren't invited to this gathering." "No?" The man, Carmine, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I thought all the families were welcome in the great Don Lorenzo's home. Or have you become selective about whose company you keep?" "I'm selective about whose treachery I tolerate." Luca moved, positioning himself slightly between me and Carmine. "You were warned to stay away from my territory. Yet here you are, violating the agreement we made after Petrov's elimination." "Petrov." Carmine spat the name. "You think removing one Russian makes you invincible? You're a child playing at being a Don, Lorenzo. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. Weak, distracted by a pretty face when you should be focusing on business." His gaze slid to me, and I felt the weight of his assessment, so different from the other families. This wasn't political calculation or concern for alliances. This was predatory interest, the look of a man considering how to use weakness against his enemy. "Choose your next words carefully, Carmine." Luca's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried through the silent room. Because insulting my woman in my home is a violation that demands a response. Your woman. Carmine laughed. Yes, I've heard about her. The little designer you've elevated above her station. Tell me, Lorenzo, does she know what you really are? What you do to people who disappoint you? Or have you been playing the gentle lover, hiding the monster underneath? I know exactly what he is. My voice surprised me, cutting through the tension. I hadn't meant to speak, but seeing Carmine's smug expression, his certainty that he could intimidate me or drive a wedge between Luca and me, ignited something fierce in my chest. I know he's powerful and dangerous and willing to make hard choices to protect the people he cares about. I know he's more than what you see, what you've reduced him to in your small-minded understanding. And I know that disrespecting him in his own home makes you either very brave or very stupid. The room was absolutely silent. I could feel everyone watching, could sense Luca's surprise and the other family's shock that I'd spoken so directly to a Don. Carmine's expression darkened, his mask of civility cracking to show the rage beneath. You dare, he started, taking a step toward me. Luca moved faster than I'd ever seen him move, his hand shooting out to grip Carmine's throat, stopping him mid-step. Touch her, he said, his voice deadly calm, and you'll learn exactly how much of a monster I can be. Threaten her, disrespect her, even look at her with calculation in your eyes again, and I will erase everything you've built. Your businesses, your family, your legacy, all of it will cease to exist. Lorenzo, Giuseppe's voice, carrying authority despite his age. Perhaps this conversation should continue in your office, away from the ladies. Luca released Carmine with a slight shove that sent the older man stumbling back. Yes, perhaps it should. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Camilla, stay with Maria and Giuseppe's daughter. I'll return shortly. Luca, trust me. He touched my cheek briefly, a gesture of reassurance. This needs to be handled, but you're safe here. No one will touch you while you're under my family's protection. I nodded, letting him go, even though every instinct screamed to keep him close, to prevent whatever violence was about to unfold in that office. As Luca, Carmine, Giuseppe, and several other men disappeared through a door at the far end of the room, the party resumed with forced normalcy, conversations restarting with brittle brightness. That was well done. Adriana appeared at my elbow, pressing a glass of wine into my hands. Most would have stayed silent, let Lorenzo handle it entirely. But you defended him, showed Carmine that you're not just decoration, but a partner who'll stand beside him. That matters. I should have kept quiet, I said, my hands shaking slightly as I sipped the wine. I probably made things worse. No. Maria's voice, firm and certain. You showed everyone here that you're worthy of standing beside him, that you're not afraid of this world or the men in it. That's exactly what he needed you to do. The minutes dragged past, each one feeling like an hour. I tried to focus on the conversation around me, tried to maintain the facade of calm sophistication. But my mind kept returning to that office, to whatever was happening behind closed doors, to Luca facing a man who clearly wanted to challenge his authority. When the door finally opened again, Luca emerged alone, his expression grim, but satisfied. Carmine was nowhere to be seen. Giuseppe and the other men followed, their faces carefully neutral, but I caught Giuseppe giving Luca a small nod of approval. Luca found me across the room, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. He crossed to me with deliberate steps, and when he reached me, he pulled me into his arms regardless of who was watching, holding me like I was precious, essential. It's handled, he murmured against my hair. Carmine won't be a problem anymore. He understands the consequences of threatening what's mine. What happened? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the details. He's leaving the city. Tonight. His territory will be absorbed into mine, and he'll retire quietly to his villa in Sicily. The alternative I offered him was less pleasant. He pulled back to look at me. You defended me, in front of everyone. Do you know what that means in this world? That I'm either brave or insane? That you're my equal, my partner. Not just someone I protect, but someone who stands beside me and fights for me when necessary. His eyes were dark with emotion. I love you more than I thought possible. More than is probably wise. You're my greatest weakness and my greatest strength. Around us, the party was winding down. Families making their departures with renewed respect in their eyes as they said goodbye to both Luca and me. The evening had been a test, and somehow we'd passed. Later, after the last guest had left and the staff had begun cleaning up, Luca led me out to the gardens, to a secluded bench overlooking the city lights. The night air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of late-blooming flowers. I need to ask you something, he said, his voice serious. And I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. I turned to face him, concerned by his tone. Are you happy? Here, in this life, with me? He took my hands in his. Because I know it's not what you planned. I know you've given up your independence, your simple life, your safety. And I need to know if it's too much, if you need something different. I studied his face, seeing the vulnerability beneath his usual confidence. This powerful, dangerous man was genuinely worried that I might regret choosing him. The realization made my heart ache with affection. I won't lie and say it's not terrifying sometimes, I admitted. Tonight, when Carmine showed up, I thought something terrible was going to happen. And there are moments when I miss the simplicity of my old life, when being Camilla from Queens seemed so much easier than being the woman at Don Lorenzo De Luca's side. His expression fell slightly, and I squeezed his hands. But, I continued, I'm happier than I've been in years, maybe ever. Because I'm with someone who sees me, really sees me, who values my opinion and my strength, who built me a design studio and remembers how I take my coffee, and looks at me like I'm the most important thing in his complicated world. So, yes, Luca, I'm happy, even with the danger and the fear and the occasional Mafia gathering where I have to defend your honor. His relief was visible, tension draining from his shoulders. I was worried. Tonight, seeing Carmine threaten you, realizing how exposed you are because of me, it reminded me that I'm selfish for keeping you in this life. You're not keeping me. I moved closer, fitting myself against him. I'm choosing to stay. Every day I choose this. Choose you. Choose us. Good. He kissed me, slow and thorough, a promise and a claim. Because I have plans for us, for our future, and they all require you to be here, by my side. What kind of plans? I asked, intrigued by the shift in his tone. The kind that involve permanently tying you to me, making you undeniably, legally, completely mine. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my heart stopped. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months. But in my world, when you find someone worth keeping, you don't wait. You claim them before anything can take them away. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took my breath away. An emerald surrounded by diamonds, the green stone catching the moonlight and reflecting it back in 1,000 facets. It was stunning, unique, exactly what I would have chosen if I'd been designing my own ring. Camila Herrera, he said, his voice carrying the weight of emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend my life protecting you, loving you, building something beautiful with you? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in all things? I should have asked for more time. Should have pointed out that we barely knew each other in the traditional sense, that marriage felt rushed even by Mafia standards. But looking at this man who'd transformed my life, who'd shown me strength I didn't know I had, who loved me with an intensity that both terrified and thrilled me, I knew my answer. Yes. The word came out as a whisper, then stronger. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll be your wife and your partner and everything else you want me to be. He slid the ring onto my finger, the fit perfect, and I realized he'd somehow gotten my size without me noticing. Probably from that detailed observation that had led to the design studio, and the coffee preferences and everything else he'd learned about me while pretending to be just a quiet accountant. I love you, he said, pulling me into his arms again. My brave, strong, perfect Camilla. You've changed everything for me, given me a reason to build something better than what I inherited, shown me that this world can have light as well as darkness. I love you too. I meant it with every fiber of my being, even though you're impossible and possessive and way too good at getting your way. Those are features, not bugs. His smile was playful, the gentle Luca from our coffee conversations making an appearance. And you love me anyway. I do. I laughed, the sound carrying joy and certainty into the night. God help me, I really do. We sat together in the gardens, wrapped in each other's arms, while the city below continued its endless rhythm of life and business and possibility. My old life felt like a dream now, something that had happened to a different person. This was my reality now. Designer turned Don's fiancé. Ordinary girl transformed into something stronger, more complex, more alive than I'd ever imagined being. My abuela would have called me crazy. But she also would have understood that sometimes love required courage, required stepping into fire and trusting that the person beside you would keep you from burning alive. I'd made my choice months ago, standing in that party with gunfire echoing around me. I'd chosen to trust Luca, to believe in him, to build a life that defied logic and embraced impossibility. Now, with his ring on my finger and his love wrapping around me like armor, I was choosing it again. And I'd keep choosing it every day for the rest of our complicated, dangerous, beautiful life together. Because some things were worth the risk, some people were worth the fear, and some loves were worth burning down your entire world to protect. Luca De Luca was all of those things and more. My coffee wizard, my Don, my future husband. And I was his Camilla, standing beside him as we built something new from the ashes of old traditions, something that honored both his Italian heritage and my Latina fire, something that proved darkness and light could coexist and create something extraordinary. The future stretched before us, uncertain and dangerous and full of promise, but we'd face it together, partners in every sense of the word. And that was enough. That was everything.